It's time to step up your stencils, and I have 3 easy ideas to share with you today. What's so great about stencils? They are affordable, and nowadays there's so many different kinds, including ones that are layered, ones that coordinate with stamps, ones that coordinate with embossing folders, so there are lots of options out there. My first technique today is to use a basic background stencil. Typically you get one in a pack, so they are very affordable and they come in so many different patterns. I've got this Shiny Diamonds stencil here, and it's a really pretty stencil just on its own. But what made me choose this stencil in particular? So it's a repeat pattern, so I thought it would look great if I laid it up. And you can have a look at your stash and see what you have, and if there's something that you might think if you turn it or twist it or do multiple layers, you're going to be able to create a whole new pattern with just one stencil. And I would recommend cleaning your stencil in between different colors, because you don't want to contaminate your inks or your brushes if you don't have many brushes. But don't get weird about it. Just give it a quick wipe. You can even use some paper towel to do this. Now, of course, there are background stencils that are built to layer. So if you don't have that confidence to give it a try yourself, then you could certainly use those. So make sure that you choose colors that are going to play well together. And if you're not sure, you can always test on a scrap piece of paper first. So when it comes to the second layer of this particular stencil, and I've literally just moved it over slightly but kept it in line with the previous pattern. So you'll see the pattern is starting to build, and I've chosen a color, like I said, that's going to go well with that first color that I laid down. And how cool does this pattern look? You wouldn't have thought those circles would be so obvious. And I could have just left it there, but I wanted to take it one step further, and I'm going to actually add another layer of stencil to this pattern. And I've lined it up again so that it coordinates with the previous patterns. And I've used a much darker color. And if you do look closely, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see though, you can actually see some of that pattern beneath that darker color. And to me, it looks like a really retro background. I love it. So I did cut that down and popped it up on the front of an A2 card, which is side fold, and added a simple sentiment. I thought the pattern here was the star of the show. Would you believe I considered doing one more layer of that dark red? I think that would have looked fabulous. In fact, I think I might make it again and do that. We're on to technique number 2 now, and that is to stencil onto design paper. This is going to totally change the look of a stencil, and it's a lot of fun to do. So I've chosen some ink drops. I think this is called design paper. It'll be linked below if you can still get it. I think you can. And I wanted to keep the same color palette that I had in the previous card, so I did actually cut a square of design paper out of the middle of that 12 by 12 sheet. But what made me choose this specific design paper? It was because it wasn't too busy. The pattern on the design paper wasn't too busy. When I add my stenciling over top, I'm still going to be able to see the pattern, but I'm also going to be able to see the images that I'm adding to the design paper. You could also use your background stencils on top of design paper. There are many different options. I've even used floral layering stencils onto design paper, and that looks really pretty. You do have to be aware that the colors that you're blending on top of the design paper are going to look different on top of colored cardstock rather than on white. So if you're not sure, it does pay to test your colors on a scrap piece of cardstock before, just to make sure that the color is going to look how you want it to. And one thing I wanted to show you here too is that I have overlapped these balloons just to make it look a little bit more realistic. I've also added more ink on the outside of the balloon to give it that dimensional look. and I didn't add too much ink. I wanted to still be able to see the design paper through the ink, and I think this looks really pretty. So this set has a coordinating stamp set, and I did come in and add strings to the balloons and a bow. You could also, if you've got a circle die or a balloon die, you could also create your own stencil by cutting a piece of paper or post-it note or masking paper and then creating your own balloons that way, and then using that like a stencil, and then draw a string with a marker. That would look fabulous too. I cut the panel down with a rectangle die and added a sentiment. I wasn't really happy with the grey ink for the sentiment, so I did come in and restamp that, thank you Misty, with some black ink. Popped up this panel, which I did layer on a second piece of cardstock just to give it a little bit more stability, and that's popped onto an A2 side fold card. Another fun option would be to add some clear embossing paste through the stencil to give these balloons some dimension. Technique number 3 is to use a layering stencil set not as it was intended. Now, what do I mean by that? This is a huge set. It has 6 stencils and 2 floral bouquets within the set. So there are lots of images within the set to choose from. And normally you would use them in order and create a 1-layer card with the floral bouquets on them. But what I'm doing here is I'm actually using the images separately. And I'm still layering up the flowers as they are meant to be layered. I'm not changing anything about that, but what I am changing is how I'm combining all of the images within the set. And because it's a floral bouquet, normally it would be flat on a card, and I want to add some dimension. So this is a really great way to add dimension, is to separate the images within a set and then fussy cut them out. And I'm going to tell Altenew that we want them to create coordinating dies for these sets. Cross fingers, they might even listen. It would be lovely, because then you've got so many more options, and you don't need dies for the whole set, just to have dies for maybe the flowers and maybe a couple of the leaves. That would be awesome. And one tip is, when you're fussy cutting, it's easier to work on a smaller sheet of paper. So cut away all the excess if you need to. So now I've got a separate flower that can add dimension to my project. But I'm not going to stop there. Rather than create the actual bouquet that was in the set, I'm changing that up as well. I am using the same layers, like the correct layers out of the set. I've got a piece of A2 cardstock, and I am adding some leaves from the layered stencils, and then I'm just picking a few of the random leaves and adding those in as well. If you're not confident to create your own layers like this, you can certainly recreate the original floral bouquet and add the flowers in the center as they were intended. But I wanted to just show you that you can actually change it up. You could also stencil some of these leaves on a separate piece of paper and fussy cut them out if you wanted to add a little bit more dimension. There is so many different options. Now these little leaves here are actually from the second set of flowers. So I just mixed and matched. So you might even have a few different floral stencils from different packets even that you can combine together and use some leaves from one and some flowers from another. And then to assemble the card, I added that A2 panel to the front of a side fold A2 card and some foam tape to the large flowers, and just added a very small flower. That was from the other bouquet out of the same stencil set. And a simple sentiment, and no black ink here today. That's a big thing for me. So check out your stash. You may have something there that you could create something similar and stretch those stencils. And all together now, we've got the design paper with the stencil balloons, the repeat basic background stencil technique, and the last one, which was to create dimension and change up your stencils, alter them, see what you can do, see how far you can get them to stretch. And I'd love to know if you have a favourite today and if you can guess mine. I've got a couple more videos here to share with you. I look forward to seeing you there. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.